They were going to kill him, the black-furred runt with glowing silver eyes, just because he was different. But even the heartless scientists at the Genotech breeding facility didn't get that chance. Rebels attacked, plasma blasts shook the building, and in the chaos, the defective Zorgax pup escaped into the war-torn streets. On the embattled planet of Akamar, the genetically engineered Zorgax pets were just another point of contention tearing society apart. To the ruling corporate technocrats, Zorgax and other gene-modded animals represented progress and prosperity. To the rebel faction led by Krillor, they were abominations, a perversion of nature. Genotech's corporate geneticists played God, while Krillor's insurgents bombed their labs and executed their executives. The plasma-scorched streets were no place for a small, helpless Zorgax runt. Starving and alone, ears ringing from deafening explosions, the black pup limped through rubble and ruin. His iridescent eyes reflected the hellish orange glow of fires ravaging the city. Soldiers and rebels clashed in vicious street-to-street fighting all around him. It was a human mercenary, Nicholas Holmes on a dreary night patrol, who spotted the bedraggled creature slinking through the shadows. Part of the technocrats' hired security force, Nick had seen plenty of fucked up things on Akamar lately. But the sight of this abandoned Zorgax, scared and alone in a war zone, tugged at something in the battle-hardened merc. Although his corporate masters played a part in creating gene-modded pets, Nick had his doubts about the whole affair. In a split-second decision that would change the course of his life, Nick scooped up the whimpering Zorgax and smuggled him back to his Spartan quarters in the fortified corporate compound. There, he secretly nursed the creature he named Corvus back to health, marveling at the pup's keen intelligence shimmering behind those strange silver eyes. But Nick had crossed a line. Akamarian law strictly prohibited keeping unregistered gene-modded animals, with harsh penalties for offenders. By rescuing Corvus, Nick risked everything: his job, his freedom, even his life on Akamar. If caught harboring this illegal freak, he'd be arrested, fired, probably deported. And Corvus, his new alien friend, would be shot between those clever silver eyes by the first corporate goon squad that found him. Nick had stepped in shit this time. He couldn't keep Corvus hidden in his room forever. But with the corporations hating renegade experiments and the rebels despising anything made in a geneticist's test tube, where could a human mercenary hide an illegal alien on a planet where everyone left this little pet to die? Nick would have to get creative, take risks, maybe even piss off both sides to keep Corvus safe. Because unlike everyone else on Akamar, human and alien alike, Nick saw value in the discarded runt's life. And damned if he'd let corporate greed or rebel fanaticism take his little buddy away. Nick knew he had to act fast. He couldn't just keep Corvus cooped up in his quarters like some sort of illegal pet. The little guy needed proper care, and Nick needed a long-term plan. So he started gathering supplies on the sly, nutrient packs, medical kits, anything a growing Zorgax might require. But Nick didn't stop there. He had to figure out what made Corvus tick, and more importantly, how to keep him safe. Using his corporate security clearance, Nick delved into Genotech's restricted databases, poring over classified files on Zorgax physiology, dietary needs, and development. He even started digging for intel on other systems outside Akamarian space, where he and Corvus might find asylum from the corporations and rebels hell-bent on destroying them both. What Nick didn't realize was that his snooping had triggered silent alarms throughout the Genotech network. As he tunneled deeper into the company's secrets, a cold-blooded Akamarian investigator named Zev Krieger watched the humans' every move with mounting suspicion. Zev was Genotech's top bloodhound, a relentless enforcer tasked with hunting down rogue experiments and failed products. And Nick's sudden interest in off-limits Zorgax data had the Akamarian hot on his trail. But even as the net tightened around them, Corvus was changing in ways that Nick could barely comprehend. It started with small things levitating around Nick's quarters when the little Zorgax got excited or agitated. Then came the headaches, skull-splitting migraines that struck any Akamarian who got too close to Corvus. As Nick watched in amazement, he began to understand the truth. Corvus wasn't some defective runt. He was a psychic prodigy. It was no wonder Genotech wanted him dead. A Zorgax with powers like that could bring the whole Akamarian system to its knees. Nick was still reeling from the revelation when all hell broke loose. Zev and his goons came smashing through the door, plasma rifles blazing. But they weren't ready for Corvus. The place turned into a war zone as the Zorgax fought back, his mind hurling objects like missiles at the attackers. Furniture splintered, equipment exploded, and bodies flew through the air. By the time the smoke cleared, Nick's quarters looked like a bomb had hit it. Corvus was gone, leaving only a trail of destruction and unconscious Akamarians in his wake. And there, flickering amid the rubble, was a message from Zev. Surrender the abomination, or die, human. Nick's blood ran cold as the reality sank in. This wasn't just about his job anymore. He was a wanted man now, and the corporation would never stop hunting him until they had Corvus's carcass as a trophy. Nick didn't hesitate. He threw together a bug-out bag with his weapons, gear, and the Zorgax supplies he'd managed to hoard. Then he pulled the most desperate move of his life, hacking into the Akamarian citizen database and erasing his own identity. With a few keystrokes, Nick Holmes disappeared, replaced by a ghost profile for some fictional human tourist named Aaron Sykes. Heart pounding, Aaron bluffed his way through the security perimeter and out of the compound. He gunned his hoverbike into the neon-soaked night, weaving through the war-ravaged streets in a desperate search for Corvus. All around him, Genotech forces were on the move, drones and patrols sweeping every inch of the city. They had orders to shoot Corvus on sight, along with any human stupid enough to protect him. Nick gritted his teeth as he plunged headlong into the chaos. Somewhere out there, a scared little Zorgax needed him, and he damn sure wasn't going to let Corvus down. If they were going to survive this nightmare, Nick would have to stay one step ahead of Genotech, the rebels, and every other trigger-happy bastard on Akamar. He'd need to find Corvus, get him off this rock, and blow the lid off the ugly truth behind Genotech's Zorgax experiments. Nick didn't know if he could pull it off. But as the wind whipped at his face and the glittering city lights gave way to the grim darkness of Akamar's hellish underbelly, one thing was crystal clear. He had to try. Everything depended on it now. Their freedom, their friendship, maybe even the fate of every Zorgax in the universe. One way or another, Nicholas Holmes was going to make it right. Nick's hoverbike screamed through Akamar's war-torn streets, dodging rubble and burnt-out vehicles. His eyes darted frantically, searching for any sign of Corvus. As dawn broke, he spotted movement in the ruins of an old factory on the outskirts. Heart pounding, Nick approached the crumbling structure. "Corvus?" he called out softly. "It's me, buddy. You're safe now." A piercing whine filled the air. Chunks of concrete suddenly lifted off the ground, hurtling towards Nick. He dove for cover as debris smashed around him. "Whoa, easy, Corvus, it's Nick." More rubble flew at him. Nick inched forward, hands raised. "I'm not going to hurt you, remember me? I helped you escape." A small black form huddled in the shadows, silver eyes glowing with fear. Nick kept talking, his voice low and steady. "That's it. Good boy. No one's going to hurt you now." Slowly, recognition dawned in those alien eyes. The barrage of debris stopped. Corvus crept forward, sniffing Nick's outstretched hand. With a happy yip, the Zorgax leapt into Nick's arms. "There's my little buddy," Nick said, relief flooding through him. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe." Nick sped through back alleys to a rundown apartment complex. He rapped out a complex knock on a battered door. It cracked open, revealing a scowling Akamarian woman. "You better have my credits, Holmes," she growled. "Nice to see you too, Kai," Nick replied, pushing past her. "I need your help." Kai's eyes widened as she spotted Corvus. "What the hell is that thing?" Nick explained the situation as Kai circled Corvus, examining him closely. "So you want me to hide you and your illegal pet?" Kai scoffed. "You're out of your mind." "Please, Kai, I've got nowhere else to go." Kai's gaze softened slightly as she watched Corvus curl up next to Nick. "Fine, but it'll cost you. All your remaining credits." Nick nodded grimly, handing over a credit chip. Kai pocketed it with a smirk. My friend Rain's coming over. He might be able to help. Hours later, a lanky Akamarian arrived. Rain's eyes lit up when he saw Corvus. Fascinating, may I? Corvus growled as Rain approached, but allowed the Akamarian to scan him with various instruments. Incredible, Rain muttered. The energy readings are off the charts. And did you see how he moved those objects telepathically? I believe we're dealing with a psionic being of immense potential. Nick nodded. Which is why Genotech wants him dead. We need to get off-world fast. Kai shook her head. Not happening. Every spaceport's locked down tight. What about your ship? Nick asked. The one hidden in the mountains? Kai's eyes narrowed. How do you know about that? Nick shrugged. I make it my business to know things. Can you get us there? Through rebel territory? With that thing? Suicide mission? We have to try, Nick insisted. They'll kill him if we don't. Rain nodded enthusiastically. Think of what we could learn. The scientific implications are staggering. I don't give a damn about your science, Kai snapped. This is too dangerous. We should ditch the freak and save ourselves. Nick's fists clenched. No way, Corvus stays with me. He's not some lab rat, Nick continued, voice rising. He's a living, thinking being. I won't abandon him to die. Their argument was cut short by the sound of a Genotech patrol outside. Kai swore, grabbing her go-bag. Shit! We're out of time. Move now! They scrambled to pack supplies as heavy footsteps approached. Nick scooped up Corvus, who whimpered softly. It's okay, buddy, he whispered. I've got you. Kai led them to a hidden passage in the back of her safe house. As they slipped away, Nick's mind raced. How the hell were they going to get through rebel territory with a telepathic alien in tow? I might have an idea, Rain said as they emerged in an alley behind the building. But you're not going to like it. Hours later, their stolen transport rumbled up to a rebel checkpoint. Nick's palms were sweaty as he gripped the steering controls. In the back, Corvus was stuffed into a cramped stasis pod, the kind used for animal transport. A gruff rebel soldier approached, rifle at the ready. Papers. Nick handed over their forged documents with a steady hand. Zoological retrieval team. Just picked up a rare specimen. The rebel's eyes narrowed as he studied the papers. Nick fought to keep his breathing even. Beside him, Kai fidgeted nervously. After an agonizing moment, the rebel nodded and waved them through. Nick exhaled slowly as they rolled past the checkpoint. One down, Kai muttered. About a dozen more to go. As they approached the next roadblock, Nick felt a wave of fear and anger wash over him. He glanced back at the stasis pod. Corvus was awake and not happy. Guys, Nick hissed, we've got a problem. The rebel manning the checkpoint frowned as he scanned their transport. His eyes widened. Energy signature detected. The stasis pod exploded outward. Corvus burst free with a psychic shriek that sent the rebels flying. Chaos erupted as troops opened fire. Go, 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 Nick yelled, stomping on the accelerator. Plasma bolts sizzled past as they careened through the checkpoint. Rain returned fire with a stolen rifle, while Kai piloted evasive maneuvers. Nick clutched Corvus tightly as the Zorgax's eyes blazed silver. A massive wave of telekinetic force smashed pursuing vehicles. Rebel troops screamed as an invisible force crushed them. Holy shit, Kai breathed as they roared towards the mountains. What the hell is he? Nick stared at Corvus in awe and fear. The little alien's power was growing by the second. As they neared Kai's hidden ship, Nick wondered what they'd unleashed and where this wild journey would take them next. Kai's battered starship limped through the inky void, systems sputtering as they pushed deeper into uncharted space. Nick slumped in the pilot's chair, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. The frantic escape from Akamar had left them all on edge. How are we looking on supplies? Nick asked, voice hoarse. Rain's fingers danced across a datapad. Not good. 2 weeks of rations, maybe 3 if we stretch it. Fuel's even worse. Great, Kai muttered from her perch by the sensor array. We're gonna die out here because you had to play hero. Nick ignored the jab, focusing instead on the silent form huddled in the corner. Corvus hadn't moved or made a sound in days. The little Zorgax's obsidian skin had taken on a strange, crystalline sheen. Bony plates now jutted from his elongated skull. "Hey, buddy," Nick said softly. "You doing okay?" Corvus didn't respond. Nick reached out, only to jerk back as a wave of raw psychic energy pulsed through the cabin. Loose objects rattled ominously. "Fascinating," Rain breathed, scribbling notes. "The trauma seems to have triggered some kind of accelerated evolution. His psionic potential is off the charts." "He's a freak," Kai spat. "We should space him before he tears this ship apart." Nick's eyes narrowed. "Touch him and I'll space you first." The tension was cut by a shrill alarm from the sensor console. Kai's eyes widened as she studied the readout. "Holy shit," she whispered. "There's something big out there." Nick peered through the view screen. His jaw dropped. Drifting before them was a colossal derelict ship, easily 100 times the size of their own vessel. Its hull was covered in strange, angular architecture, unlike anything he'd ever seen. "Is that alien?" Nick asked. Rain nodded excitedly. "It must be. The xenoarchaeological implications are staggering." "Who cares about history?" Kai snapped. "That thing might have supplies we can salvage." Nick weighed their options. With resources dwindling, they couldn't afford to pass up this opportunity. And maybe the alien ship held clues about Corvus's origins. "All right," he said finally. "Let's check it out. But we stick together. Got it?" They docked with the massive derelict, the airlock hissing as it equalized pressure. Nick led the way, rifle at the ready. Kai and Rain followed close behind, with Corvus bringing up the rear. The alien corridors stretched endlessly, bathed in an eerie blue glow. Strange symbols covered the walls. Nick felt a chill as they passed what looked like stasis pods, big enough to hold entire star cruisers. "This is incredible," Rain muttered, scanning everything in sight. "The technological level is centuries beyond anything in known space." They entered a vast chamber filled with holographic displays. Nick's blood ran cold as he deciphered the images. Planet after planet, reduced to ash and rubble. "My God," he breathed. "They were exterminators, wiping out entire species." Kai's eyes narrowed as she studied the displays. "Look at this. They targeted worlds with high concentrations of psychic potential, trying to eliminate the genetic trait." Nick glanced back at Corvus. The Zorgax's eyes glowed with an unnatural silver light. Before he could speak, a piercing shriek filled the air. A hovering security drone burst into the chamber, energy weapons primed. "Get down!" Nick yelled, diving for cover. Plasma bolts sizzled overhead as Kai and Rain scrambled behind a console. The drone advanced relentlessly, unfazed by their return fire. Nick's mind raced. They were outgunned and trapped. Suddenly, the air itself seemed to ripple and distort. Nick turned to see Corvus floating several feet off the ground, eyes blazing with psychic energy. The Zorgax let out an inhuman screech. A wave of pure telekinetic force slammed into the drone, smashing it against the far wall. The impact shook the entire chamber. Cracks spiderwebbed across the alien metal as consoles exploded in showers of sparks. When the dust settled, Nick gaped in awe and terror. Where Corvus had stood moments before now loomed a titanic, mutated form. The Zorgax had doubled in size, body rippling with psionic energy. Those silver eyes now held an alien intelligence that dwarfed anything human. Nick, Kai, and Rain cowered before the godlike being Corvus had become. What purpose would this hyper-evolved entity now choose? As those luminous eyes gazed down upon them, Nick realized their fates hung in the balance. Balance of fate as Corvus gazed upon them with unfathomable alien intelligence. Nick's mind reeled as a torrent of horrifying visions flooded his consciousness. He saw vast cyclopean cities stretching across dead worlds, inhabited by monstrous entities wielding unimaginable psionic might. Civilizations burned, Entire species snuffed out like candles in a hurricane. "No," Nick gasped, clutching his head. "What is this?" Beside him, Rain convulsed, eyes rolling back in his skull. The Akamarian's body went rigid, then limp. When his eyes opened again, they glowed with an eerie silver light. "Such insignificant mites," Rain's voice rasped, but the words weren't his own. "Your intellects are but candle flames guttering in the cosmic winds of my comprehension." Nick stumbled back, grabbing Kai's arm. "Run!" They bolted down twisting alien corridors, the walls pulsing with eldritch energy. Nick's lungs burned as he pulled Kai along, the woman's face a mask of terror. "We can't escape," Kai panted. "It's everywhere." Nick's eyes darted frantically, searching for an exit. He spotted an airlock ahead and dragged Kai towards it. A psychic presence slammed into their minds, crushing and all-encompassing. Nick's knees buckled as an alien voice reverberated through his skull. "Do not fight the inevitable submergence, my finite friends. I offer you the gift of unbounded cosmic awareness, the ability to shed your limited flesh like soiled rags and join the infinite radiance of transcendent apotheosis. I shall elevate you into a higher ecstasy of being beyond your narrowest dreams." Nick gritted his teeth, fighting against the invasive presence. He glanced at Kai and saw her eyes glazing over, a rapturous expression spreading across her face. "No!" Nick shouted, shaking her. "Don't listen!" But Kai was already slipping away, her body going slack as her consciousness unraveled. Nick saw tendrils of scintillating energy beginning to stream from her eyes and mouth. With a wordless cry of anguish and defiance, Nick slammed his palm against the airlock controls. The hatch hissed open, and he hurled himself inside, dragging Kai's limp form with him. As the outer doors began to cycle open, Nick's last glimpse was of Kai's body dissolving into streams of radiant energy, pulled inexorably back towards the titanic psychic maelstrom that had once been Corvus. The escape pod rocketed away from the derelict ship. Nick's vision swam as waves of psionic energy battered his fragile human mind. He felt his thoughts, his very identity, beginning to unravel. As oblivion claimed him, Nick clung fiercely to his humanity. He might be destroyed, consumed by this cosmic horror, but some part of him, some spark of defiant human will, would...
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.